Chapter 51. Rampaging Hazards, and a straightforward question. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After I placated Nushi, she went and joined the other girls while I finished feeding Mary. As I was doing that, I reopened the menu for the selection and was about to warn Mary to cover her eyes just in case, but I let that breath out as I made the selection. No light came on, but I did it with a crash course on what seemed to be a very basic class and then a small stat chart with numbers like a game. The names were straightforward enough that even this meathead could puzzle them out. Shaman class, acquired. Shaman. With this class, you will need to create bonds with all forms of nature in order to receive totems. Totems are marks that you will receive, and they will grant you minor abilities. You must gain elemental totem marks in order to store more marks, or you will run out of skin to place marks. To gain elemental totem marks, you must form bonds with pure elementals. Name. Kaz, level 2, class. Shaman. Strength 2, dexterity 1, fortitude 4, +1. Earth blessing / EOD, wisdom 3, intellect 1, spirit 3, energy, 0, class skills. Rank 1. Target a plant to speak to it. 55% chance of success. 10% chance of irritation. Rank 1. Auto, trigger, totem bond is triggered when a totem mark can be acquired. The target must express gratitude to you in some form in order to trigger totem bond. Bonds. Elemental bonds. Blessings. Earth blessing. Grogvel's laugh is far worse than his bite. Gain +1 fortitude for being chewed up and spit out until the end of day. Well, whoever created this thing had a sense of humor, that was for sure, but a 10% chance of irritating a plant. What did that even mean? Was I going to piss a tree off and get attacked? Maybe I would have to try it on something like a dandelion or tulip that was small, so if I did piss it off, the fallout wouldn't be that bad. I stood up and brushed my hands on my pants, and Mary wrapped her arms around my neck and then rested her head on my shoulder. The girls had already cleaned up the grill and put out the fire, so it looked like it was time to get moving. Everyone ready to go? I asked. Just waiting on you and the sleeping beast, Jilly said with a grin, but Mary hissed from my shoulder. I can still hear you, and I is too cute to be a beast's. Jilly rolled her eyes, but Mary wasn't wholly wrong. I mean, she has only tried to eat me once for real, so there is that. Okay, Nushi, are you ready? I asked her, and she nodded. The Cerberus girls were already changed back into dog form, so I pointed to the path, and Nushi climbed on Jilly's back. We followed the same walking pattern and started down the trail. Just as we did, I was looking over towards the place where Mex had pointed out that held the Minstian, Jezabel. I would have to make time to go over and visit her, but that could be an early morning thing. I could possibly do it before having to make the girls breakfast if I got up early enough. Did my father talk to you about Jezabel already? Nushi asked from up ahead as I turned from the northwest back west to her voice and started walking again. I hadn't realized I had stopped. Yes, I was thinking about her. I would guess that you are friends with her. I asked as I followed along. Like before, the vegetation was starting to become more jungle-like and more humid and hot. I knew this was a cool spring day compared to the hell we would be facing after this next training boot camp with Wataluga. No, I have only met her one time, and it was pretty bad. Jezabel is very pretty and smart, but she is very tall, big-boned, and scared of everything, even her own shadow. When Father brought her home, she ended up rampaging through the castle, and Father had to knock her unconscious, Nushi explained to me. Wow, so then I guess your father put Jezabel in the maze to keep her safe? I asked. Yes, her milk is special, but until she has a child, she can't produce milk. Her being scared of everything makes that very unlikely to happen unless she is forced. That's why my father watches over her, Nushi told me. What is your father's deal? Is he like the worst demon ever? I asked, trying to wrap my head around the enigma that was Mexico. Bad. I guess if you look at him and compare him to the other demons on this island, the mainland demons are a lot different than the ones around here. My father is just a good person, no matter what Nishi or any of the other demons say, Nushi said with a nod of her head, and I had to agree, but the atmosphere had just changed. Kaz, this is not good, we need to turn around, right? Jilly started to say, but a seductive female voice cut her off. Leave. No, you just got here, and I would like to play a little game with you, said the voice of a 3-meter tall lioness with wings and a human face, but that was where the human stopped. This monster was not like the girls, but it did not look like something we could deal with physically. Yup, we're all going to be drooling over ripened fruit in about 30 seconds, Jilly said while throwing her hands up in the air, but I was confused by her comment. A game? What kind of game? I asked suspiciously. She wants you to answer a riddle, and if you are wrong, she will eat all the thoughts in your head, Nushi said. It's very simple, I ask you a question, and you tell me the answer before I get bored and eat your thoughts for fun. The Sphinx said with a nasty smile. Chapter 52. A question, and a food-stealing whore. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I moved to the front of the group to stand with Jilly and Nushi, but I wasn't really sure what to expect. I wasn't a Jeopardy guy, and I would never make it past the 5th question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire without using all of my lifelines. PST. Nushi whispered to me and then pointed at her book. At first, I had no idea what she was insinuating, but then it dawned on me. This was a proud creature, and there was no way that it would hold back the answer if I got it wrong. I nodded, and Nushi's horns grew back to full strength, but I wanted to get some things straight before we started. It wasn't like the Sphinx had to answer me, but I would try to bait her into it. You must be pretty good at asking these questions. Does it matter if I ask some else? You know, considering it's most likely going to be something that I have no idea how to answer, right? I asked in a casual tone. The creature looked me up and down, and I tried to dumb down my expression. The Sphinx looked bright but maybe a little too smart for her own good. Yes, I can see that you are a lower breed of animal, so I can't see why having these other mouth breathers helping you is a problem, the Sphinx said haughtily, turning her nose up at the girls. Good, so, what do you have for me? What kind of question is it, oh great sphincter? I asked, holding a straight face. Two can play underhanded ball. What did you just call me? The Sphinx asked, glaring at me. You were about to ask me a challenging question, right? I asked back, and the glare squint tightened on me. Fine, I won't hold back then. You measure my life in hours, and I serve you by expiring. I'm quick when I'm thin and slow when I'm fat. The wind is my enemy. What am I? The Sphinx asked with a tone like she had already won. I looked over at Nushi, and she mouthed the word candle, and I thought about it, and it made sense. A candle, I said plainly, and the Sphinx reared up in excitement before the answer had left my mouth. Wrong. It's a candle. Wait, how did you know that? The Sphinx asked as she came back to the ground, starting to glare at me. Made sense, I said as I started to look around, trying to look bored. Fine. But you will never get this one. The Sphinx said, but I put up a hand. Hold on. I am not familiar with the rules of this game, but there must be some, and I don't think that you get to keep asking, right? I asked, giving the beast a severe look, and the girls nodded at my words. Ha! Now, who is the stupid overgrown catbird? Bwahahaha! Jilly asked and then burst out laughing maniacally. Wait. That's not fair. There is no way you got the answer so fast. You must have cheated. The Sphinx raged, but I had enough and pulled out both my weapons. Since your game is done, I will give you a choice. Stay here, and we will all find out what you taste like. Or, you can leave to spin another riddle. We have places to go and things to do before it gets dark, I said calmly as I ignited the flame sword. The loose leaf dagger was in blender mode again, and I hoped it would calm down a bit if I had to fight this thing. While it might be big, now that it was struggling to gain ground, the idea of it being a treat had disappeared. You have not seen the last of me. We meet again, Skinwalker. The Sphinx raged at me but then turned and stormed off the path. I watched her go but motioned for Jilly to start walking. This was wasting time, and we had a long lunch break. So what is a Sphinx anyways, so I know for next time? I asked as we walked along. She is a monster that feeds off people's thoughts, but because they are so powerful, they have a restriction placed on them. They have to ask you a riddle, and if you fail or don't ask fast enough, Nushi explained. How long is too long? Do I have 30 seconds or a minute? I asked. I don't know the answer to that. Anyone who has experienced a Sphinx encounter is left one of two ways, alive or drooling with no thought in your mind to move your body. You will end up either getting eaten alive or starving to death in a puddle of your own excrement, Nushi explained, and a cold shiver ran through my body. Well, I will have to make sure and avoid that creature at all costs, or that will be my fate, I said, but then I noticed the smoke coming up from the lava lake, and I looked up at Jilly. What do you know about Lizzie, the magma spider? Besides that, she is a food and man-stealing slut. The witch is a glutton that fucks and eats more in one day than I could in two. Jilly said with disgust. I guess that you two had some problems in the past. I asked curiously, but Jilly became closed-mouthed and wouldn't talk about it. I also got a head shake that said no and a hand slice across her neck to signal that it was a sore subject. Thankfully, the bushes ahead started to rustle, and I got myself prepared to attack whatever came out, but it was only a rabbit. I let out a sigh to the cute little creature and was about to start moving, but Jilly darted forward and grabbed the rabbit. Before I could open my mouth, I watched in horror as Jilly stuck the squealing creature in her mouth, and I almost puked at the sound she made. W.A.T. I am a Stwess eater. Jilly shouted at me with a mouth full of the whole half-chewed once adorable rabbit, and I sighed again. Chapter 53. Secret revealed, and hissing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I left Jilly alone and dropped the talk of Lizzie, but we were getting close to the waterfall now. I could hear the dull roar of the water get louder until we walked out into the clearing. The water was misting from the falls, and I walked over to the pool of water with the girls. As we approached, a shape rose out of the water in the form of a little old wizard. So, you did come and brought the girls with you, does that mean you are ready to sweat? Wataluga asked me as he stepped out onto the grass. I hope your training is more than laughing me into submission. We already had that one, I said with a smile, and the old watery wizard smiled back at me, but then he started to expand. No jokes, but this will be harder than the hand-holding Grogville does. I am just going to have you run today, and then tomorrow we'll start the fighting, Wataluga said as his body rapidly expanded to cover us up to our necks and fill the clearing with his watery body. I want you all to start running laps, and I will say when to stop, Wataluga said from the center of the clearing where he rose up. This was weird, I had never been in floating water, and it was floating off the ground in the middle of my calves. Then I noticed that something was missing, and I felt around my waist. Mary was gone. Where did Mary go? I asked, looking around at the other smiling and bobbing heads. The water was somehow able to climb 3 meters up to Jilly's neck, but then only covered Nushi's neck as well, and she was half the height of Jilly. I am right, Harass. Mary said from behind me, and I whirled around to find her head bobbing above their water. Monster Girl secret. Mary. Mary is part mermaid, and she has many sisters. New skill. Mary. Water manipulation. Control and shape water at will. I closed the tab in shock and then looked down into the water, and sure enough, Mary was now a fish. I feel like I should be more surprised that she is a mermaid, but I had never really given it much thought. "Yes, there you are, and your tail looks really good on you," I said, but then found myself being drawn towards Mary, and she was reaching out from me. I was more than willing to take her into my arms, but the moment I was about to embrace her, we were ripped apart. "Alright, kids, go hump in the bush on their own time. Not in my body. Now, get running, or I make the water like mud to run in right off the start." Wataluga warned, and we all started to jog. I started to run, and Mary and the girls all started to jog with me. The Cerberus girls were bobbing along, and Nushi was running with them. Mary was swimming beside Jilly as she scuttled along, and she looked like she was enjoying herself. Jilly had been uncharacteristically quiet since I had brought up the magma spider. I might have to try and talk to her alone after this to find out what really happened between the two. Maybe it would be better to just ask Nushi instead of antagonizing Jilly more. Jilly eating the whole rabbit had made it clear that I had touched on a very sore subject. It all was a reminder that Jilly was a ravenous man-eating creature, and I would have to be careful with her. It was really lovely and refreshing, but extremely weird. The water didn't touch my skin the way water should, it was more like the water was just holding on to me. Instead of getting a wet feeling from the water, it was more like a cool gel being pressed against my skin. As we jogged, I could slowly feel the water start to press in on me more, and I was starting to sweat, but when I tried to dunk my head into the water, I almost broke my nose. "Don't try to stick that sweaty face into me. You have 4 more laps, and then you can go take a dip in the actual water," Wataluga said, laughing as I rubbed my face and then continued running. The last 4 laps gave a total of 20 laps around the clearing, and there weren't more than a 200-meter jog, but those last 2 laps. The second last one was exactly what I would expect it to feel like running through mud. The last one was a fish of a different color, the water became like rocks and crushed my body, but I kept going until I was done. I will have to say that I am not unimpressed with you. Tomorrow we will start the fighting training, but today I needed to get my body used to the pressure that it will be under tomorrow. Go have a quick dip, but then I suggest you all make haste, the sun has started its trip back into the great beyond, Wataluga said as all the water from the clearing drained back into him impossibly. "Thank you," I said, and rolled my shoulders, and then did a small stretch. That was a body pounding, but I also felt lighter than I had before, so I wanted to try something. I bent my knees and then jumped almost 2 meters in the air. I almost didn't stick the landing. I was so shocked, but I was able to catch myself. I could make it in the NBA with this kind of air time. "Kames in the waters, Kazis.Kazz. Mary called to me cutely from the water she had already climbed into, trying to spit my name out. "Beov, no, you heard the old man. We need to get going before it gets dark," Jilly said in a no-nonsensical tone. "Auntie is just wanted to play with hims." Mary hissed and then did some spins in the water. "No, you can play with him tonight when we are safe. Now, get out of the water." Jilly hissed back at Mary, and Mary rolled her stoned eyes. Chapter 54. Discipline. Glad it's not me you are listening at novelfull.audio. I walked over to the water and bent down to splash my face, and then I cupped my hands to take a drink. Mary was swimming around me as I did this, softly humming to some unknown melody that was both beautiful and alluring at the same. I turned my face to look into Mary's stone eyes as I listened to the song she was humming. I felt myself being drawn into Mary like there was some unseen force that was pulling me closer, then I got a rough smack upside my head. It didn't hurt, but I was knocked ass over tea kettle from the impact of Jilly's big hand in my squatting position. As I slowly picked myself up, I realized something. I did not have time to be messing around like this right now. "Come here." "What did I just tell you?" Jilly shouted as she came over to the water edge and dove in after Mary. Or, that's what had assumed was happening, but only the female half of Jilly went in. Her red-plated centipede body stayed up, and soon it reared up, pulling Jilly back out. "Stop acting like a child. Or I will put you over my knee like last time. I am not hurting you, I am teaching you valuable lessons. Jilly growled at the squirming Mary, who suddenly stopped resisting. Is just wanted to have some funs with him, Auntie, Mary whimpered out in a hiss. I was glad I wasn't doing the punishing right now. That little stunt right there would have turned me into jello, but Jilly seemed to have a fly up her ass right now. Yes, later when we are home and safe, or would you like to get eaten by a pack of behemoths? You know what it's like out here at night, even for you, Jilly said as she set Mary down. I was back up on my feet again, and I walked over to where Jilly had set the downcast-looking Mary. I reached down, and put my hands under her arms, and lifted her up. As I did, Mary started to smile again, and she slowly wrapped her body around mine. Once she was done, I let go of Mary, and she moved around to her spot where she usually stayed. Is be a good girl force my now, okay? Mary hissed softly into my ear and then licked my neck up to my ear. I closed my eyes briefly for a moment to enjoy the wave of pleasure that rocketed through my body, but then I opened my eyes. I turned to Jilly, who was looking as impatient as ever. Are you okay with running with Nushi on your back? I asked Jilly, and she nodded. Yes, let's just get going already, if we can make it there fast enough, the bitch will still be sleeping. So, chop. Chop rancher boy, Jilly said and took off towards Fire Den and the lava lake. Make sure you hold on, okay? I am going to start running, I said to Mary, but then I turned to my Cerberus girls. Are you girls ready to go for a run? The girls all started to bark with different levels of excitement, but their body was jumping back and forth. I smiled and then took off after Jilly, and Nushi who had already gained a bit of distance from us. Jilly was in a hurry, and I guessed that I couldn't blame her if she disliked Lizzie that much. I ran hard to catch up with her, and the Cerberus girls ran beside me the entire time. While I had never really had many pets, it was only because I had a job at the time that required me to be away from home a lot. I didn't think that it was right to own animals if you couldn't take care of them. While this might seem like common sense to most, it wasn't, and animals were neglected all the time. So, running with the Cerberus girls was like having my own dog, even though I didn't consider the girls to be something I owned. For me, all these girls were just people to take care of, and I was slowly starting to get past my aversions with even Jilly's body. Thinking of her body, I started to look over her red carapace shell as I ran. I remembered it being a lot shinier before, and now there was even some dust and mud covering some of the red. I think that maybe tomorrow I will give Jilly a bath if she lets me. Maybe it might be able to help with some of her wild pent-up stress that she was under from Lizzie coming to join us. I liked Jilly, and she was a great help when I came to get people in line, so I wanted her to feel the same as the other girls were. It was starting to get hot fast as we ran, and I could see the smoke rising from far up ahead. As we got closer, the trees were starting to thin, and now were nothing more than wilted and ash-covered sticks poking from the ground. Let me do the talking with this one, I know Fire Den well, and he will not mess around if I tell him not to, Jilly called back to me as we neared the massive crater that had a small stream of smoke coming out of it. Sure, let's get this over with, and then we can get to the last challenge. Windorf's challenge was speedy last time, so that shouldn't take long, I said as we reached the edge of the crater, but we had to start backpedaling right away as we felt the heat begin to rise fast. A massive melting hand that was on fire reached up and gripped the edge of the crater. The other one followed, and then the enormous burning face for Fire Den poke above the edge. Oh! Look who has come back for story time. Boy, do I have a good long one for you today. Fire Den said with a chuckle, but his laugh was cut off. No, you don't, you have a very short story to tell us. I refuse to be near this place when Sichi wakes up. Jilly said as she clicked over to stand between the elemental and me. Oh, Jilly, I didn't see you there, Sure, but you had better let the boy come without you tomorrow if you're still going to be sore about this, Fire Den said with a hot sigh. Chapter 55 Close contact. I would not be held responsible. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I don't want any messing around, you hear me, old man. I want you to pick a short tale and not go on and on. Jilly said, scowling at the massive burning face of Fire Den. The Cerberus girls had just finished transforming, and now they were standing beside Mary and me. The girls had been all panting before, but the moment they turned back into human form, the girls all broke out in a sweat. Do we have to wear this dress right now? Sarah asked as the right-pawed hand pulled the hair from her eye that was sticking to her face. I am getting too wet, Bera complained as she looked down at her dress that was starting to get wet from the intense amount of sweat coming from the girls, and I nodded my head. Yes, you girls can get out of that, and I will carry it for you, I said, but the girls didn't move. We need your help to get it off, please. It is hard for us to take off or put clothes on, Reese said to me. I looked over at Jilly and Fire Den, and the two of them were having a stare of wasting time. I turned back to the miserable-looking girls that were now in a soaked dress that was slicking to their body. Even with the heat, the sight of their hard nipples pressing through their dress was making me get excited. I decided that it would be easier to do this from the back, so I moved behind them and undid the back buttons to the girls' white and yellow dress. After I was done undoing them, I had to peel the dress off and then pull it down to let them step out of it. I didn't hold myself back from enjoying the lovely view of the girl's thick and round bottom, but I had to readjust myself after. As I reached my hand into my pants to lay my stiffening tent pole down, the girls turned around and looked straight at my hand. I was looking dead ahead, and yup, there were 3 clits that would need more research later, hee. You want a short story then? Come to me for training and then yell at me and order me around. Ha! I have just the story for you then. Fire Den said to Jilly, but that made Jilly narrow her eyes and the burning face. I had my hand out now, but the girls were still eyeing the bulge in my pants. Why did these situations always need to come up when I couldn't act on them? I could love to let these girls have their way with me like they seemed to want, but no was not the time nor place. Things with Fire Den and Jilly also looked pretty tense, but she told me that I wouldn't need to talk, so I decided that it was better to let her do what she wanted. Everyone gather around, the story is more effective if you all stay close, Fire Den said, and then Jilly turned back to us and glared. Sit down, and let the girls sit in your lap, and I will press into your back with Mary, Jilly said as she skittered over to me. I was going to complain, but the look Jilly was giving me said, I dare you. So, I stayed quiet and sat down as the naked Cerberus girl came over to sit in my lap. The girls pushed themselves back as they sat down and then let their sweat-soaked bottoms slide down my chest. As they did, I felt Mary push over, and then she pulled back for a moment. While that happened, the Cerberus girls slid down onto my rock-hard shaft, but my shorts acted like a barrier. Still, the girls had pushed my shaft down flat, and it was a bit uncomfortable, but I wasn't sure that I disliked it. Then I felt both Mary and Jilly pressing into my back, and I started to get very hot, and not just from the heat coming from them. The girls had taken their tops off, and now I could feel the hot and stiff points of their nipples pressing into my back. Well, no, that you are all close together and comfortable, I think. Don't you want to take your boy shorts off? You are going to start swimming in those. Fire Den said as he gave me a critical look, and then the Cerberus girls hopped up fast from my lap. I am not sure that is a good thing, I started to say, but then stopped and started to pull my shorts off awkwardly in my sitting position after Jilly let out a low and menacing growl from very close to my ear. Fine, I tried to warn the two of them, so I could not be held responsible for what the Cerberus girls did from this point. I was excited to hear the story, but when I watched the hot little triple-breasted Cerberus girls slowly lower their thick, jiggling bottom, I didn't really care what the story was about. Now, I will tell you a short tale about 2 mighty women that did not get along. Fire Den started as I felt the girls wiggle their way down to get between my stomach and shaft, forcing me back down. I felt myself slide out, and then the girls closed their legs and leaned back into me, getting comfortable. Mary licked my neck, but then snaked over my shoulder and then reached down to between the Cerberus girl's legs, and then wrapped her hands around it tight. This is Minas. You can't have his seed. Mary hissed at the girls, and the girls cuddled back into me, and then Mary finally let me go, but that had taken some of the fire out of me. I finally felt myself calm down and soften, and the girls end up sliding past it and deeper into my lap. I let out a sigh and turned my focus back to the burning face that wasn't feeling that hot anymore. Now, since you are all done horsing around, I shall begin, Fire Den said, and suddenly the heat intensified. Chapter 56. Betrayal of Trust. I want you first. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Now, Jilly is not going to like this, but she won't tell you exactly what happened either. So, I will tell you the story of two proud women, who are both terrible losers, Fire Den said, and Jilly was gripping my shoulder as hard as the system would let her. The wave of heat that came off Fire Den felt like they would melt my skin from my body. I wasn't sure what this was doing, but I just remembered feeling lighter and faster after I was done. 1 year ago, Jilly was living down in the crater with me and the rest of the fire denizens of the crater. During that time, Lizzie had arrived, and the two had become fast friends, but that only lasted until Jilly had offered Lizzie a friendly bet, Fire Den explained, but Jilly's face poked over my shoulder and I could feel her heartbeat racing on my back. That bitch cheated, and you know it. You know what she did wasn't right. That was my home. Jilly shouted, but her tone was strained. She almost sounded in tears, so I put a hand on hers where Jilly gripped my shoulder. Jilly let me take her hand, and she seemed to calm down, but now even Fire Den had a strained look on his face. Yes, what happened wasn't right, but I had also told you not to do it. You were the one that made a bet and set the terms, and that was your mistake, Fire Den said, shaking his head back and forth. The waves of heat were starting to become more bearable, but I also had stopped sweating. Even the Cerberus girls had almost stopped, but they still had beads on their skin. Still, there was no way that you could have known that she was going to act like that after. I am sure that this has been a valuable lesson, and because of it, you were back to meet this boy. I think that it was worth going through a bit of a hard time to reach where you are now, right? Fire Den asked Jilly, and Jilly mumbled yes, but only loud enough for me to hear, but Fire Den knew. So, what is the story then? What was the bet? I asked, trying to move the conversation along. Yes, I will get to that now. Jilly asked Lizzie if she would like to have a competition to see who could screw the most men. I think you know what happens to the males after, but for some reason, the denizens below don't mind getting eaten if they get a chance at the girls. Each one of them thinks that they will be different, but that is satyrs for you, horny till the very end. Fire Den said with a booming laugh. Later laid the heat to us, but now the heat felt differently. What does your training do? Sorry for interrupting, but I am concerned about stopping sweating. That is usually a sign that I am dehydrated, and that could be dangerous for me and the girls, I told Fire Den, and he nodded at me with a knowing look. That is a fair assumption, but your body is normally made of 70% water. Each visit with us will slowly replace that water with elemental energy. I can sense that you have changed now, and I can sense your shaman class. You absorbing the elements is even more essential now if you plan on forming contracts with us, Fire Den said to me, and I was a bit shocked. Are you okay with this? I asked in confusion, but Fire Den only laughed at me. I have been stuck here now for longer than any creature on this island, and making a contract is the only chance that we have to leave. Now, we were going to bind with you, but it would have made dramatic changes to your body, and we weren't sure if you would accept that. Mex had told us not to worry, and he turned out to be right, Fire Den explained. So, now that I have the shaman class, you don't have to change me? I asked. That's right. Instead, we will just become your elemental marks, and we will still be able to be free when you let us. If we were to bind with you, then we would have become a part of you until you died, and then we would be released, Fire Den said, but then looked back into the pit and then turned back to me. I think that we have used up all our time today. Jilly, treat him well, and he will do the same. Fire Den waved for us to leave, but I never got to the end of the story. Hey, what about the end? I asked, and Fire Den stopped and looked at Jilly. You can tell him now, I did the hard part, my dear. Tell him, and move on, you don't need to keep carrying the weight around with you, Fire Den said and then sunk back down. Jilly pulled back from me and then went over to pick up her clothes and Mary's, but never put them back on yet. The girls were still all covered in sweat, and I had no towels to dry them off, but then I noticed Nushi. Hey, why didn't you come with the others and take your clothes off? Your shirt is soaked to the bone now. I said as I stood, but when I looked into Nushi's eyes they were pretty big and not pointing to my face. Then I realized where she was looking, so I grabbed the Cerberus girls and pulled them to stand between us. Nushi quickly turned once her eye contact was broken. Sorry. I can't be as close as you can yet, Anne. I wanted to wait for you to see me naked, but now I have seen you naked, Nushi said, and I saw her start to reach for her shirt, and she started to pull it up. I let go of the girls, rushing over to Nushi, and wrapped my arms around her to stop her from getting undressed. I guess that she had thought that she needed to show me now that she had seen me fully naked, but that wasn't necessary, but Nushi gasped when I grabbed her. I was about to let her go, but she gripped my arms, and I waited. I knew what had caused the gasp. I was pressed into her back with no pants on and hard as stone. Still, I remembered how she had acted before, so it was weird that the press of me into her back wasn't bothering her. Did you have sex with Liddy yet? Nushi asked me quietly, and I replied quietly and quickly. We had some fun, but no intercourse if that is what you mean. I asked, and I felt Nushi press into me. Good, I want you first, please, Nushi said cutely and then turned her face to kiss my cheek and then ran to climb onto Jilly. Chapter 57. Sharked, but not cheated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jilly let Nushi climb on top of her after she pulled away from me. I turned around to get my shorts and almost tripped over the Cerberus girls but was able to sidestep around them. I got my shorts on, scooped up all the rest of the girls' clothing, and then started back after Jilly. I also told the girls to go back into pup form for now, and later I would give them a bath. I decided that I was just going to rip the band-aid off with Jilly. I had to hope that she just tells me what the problem was when I ask. Hey, so are you ready to tell me how this spider cheated? I asked plainly after I caught up to Jilly. She was quiet for a moment, but then she took a deep breath and then let it out. Whatever this was, it really bothered her, and I kind of wish that Mary wasn't needy today, but only kind of. I asked Lizzie to take a bet with me about who could get the most men to come to us so we could feast on them. At the time, I had thought that I knew her quite well, but I was very naive, and I had never seen a spider before this. Regardless, I challenged her to the bet, but I said that the winner gets to choose the prize, Jilly said as we jogged along. I can see where this is going. You got sharked, I said plainly as we ran. What did you just say? Jilly asked, looking a bit miffed. The term sharked is for those good at a certain type of bet.able event, but they hide their skills. They will even go as far as to lose a couple times to help build your confidence, but that's when they get you. After playing a couple rounds of them losing, they will offer or encourage the other person to make a much larger bet, I explain, and Jilly's eyes went big, and she slowed down to a stop. I hadn't realized just how far we have traveled, but now I could see that the rock plateau outcropping was only about 100 meters away. I slowed with Jilly and stopped, petting the Cerberus girls' heads when they came over to me. This is a thing. So, I should have known about this. Jilly asked in disbelief, but I shook my head no. It is a term from my old world, so I do not think that it would be called the same, but regardless. You made a mistake in not knowing what your opponent was capable of, and you did not set limits, but you already know this. Jilly, whatever happened between you two is not worth the fight for you, I said, reaching out to Jilly and putting my hand out to take her hand, but she crossed her arms, so I dropped it. I know that I was big-headed now, but what am I supposed to do? Just ignore that she cheated and, Jilly started to say, but I put up my hand to stop her. Did you set out any rules? Did you say there were things that she or you could not do? I am not trying to take anyone's side here, but logically speaking, she didn't cheat because there were no rules set out, and honor doesn't count. I added in at the end when I saw Jilly taking a deep breath for another excuse, but I forced her to deflate. Fine, I am serious about her, though. I know you plan on going to see the other girls tomorrow after your training, but you need to watch out, or you will end up as a meal, Jilly said as she turned back to the direction we were headed. I will, and I will also try and see what I can do about whatever her problem is. Thank you for the warning, but I think we had better get going, the sun is starting to skin. One thing, everyone is ready, I think that he will only come for me, but there is no guarantee, I said to the girls as I pulled out my loose leaf dagger and my flame blade thinger. I still hadn't really thought of a proper good name for the weapon, but I think that it will just come to me. Naming things was one of those things that either felt right or didn't. Yes, I am feeling grimy, but I am also exhausted, Jilly said as we approached the rock ledge. I walked to the front of the group this time, and I started to walk out, but suddenly Nushi cried out. From your left side. She cried, and I brought both swords around and hammered Windorf back. I had my eyes on him now, but something was different. I could feel him swirling around in the place he stood, but then he disappeared, blowing away, but I could still feel him. I dashed forward, not following him, that was pointless, he was too fast. Instead, I picked up speed and watched for him to come in for the attack. Even though I could feel where she was, I still barely had time to execute my plan correctly. I spun my blades and smashed Windorf back again, but now he looked pissed. Windorf didn't say a word the entire time, but after getting smashed back, I could see that he was getting frustrated. I must be progressing faster than he had anticipated, and now he was trying to overdo it, and sure enough, Windorf blew away. This time it was much different, and now I had no way to know where he was coming from, or maybe he was coming from all 10 of the different sources that I felt. I slowed down and got myself centered but then stopped and quickly put my weapons away. I got myself into the ready position, and I was sure that I could hear Windorf laugh at me. I was going to try something, and if he was going to actually hit me, Windorf would have to be solid. Ready to die, multiple echoes called out around me, but I just grinned and called back to him. Are we going to fight? Or are you just planning on talking me to death? I asked and closed my eyes. Chapter 58. The Run Back, Something Doesn't Feel Right. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With my eyes closed now, I could feel the different copies of Windorf, but only one of them was the real one. Now with my eyes closed, I was quickly able to lock onto him, and with this new sense, I could keep my eyes closed. I waited, and I assumed that Windorf was attacking me right away after my comment, but the windbag was made of more potent stuff, it seemed. Regardless, I would just have to wait. This was probably one of his tactics to catch me off guard, but I was surprised when I felt him slow down until he stopped moving altogether. That is all, Windorf said, and I opened my eyes, but at the exact moment, all traces of him had disappeared. I turned back and walked back over to the girls where we were all waiting, but then I remembered something and wanted to kick myself. Mary, can you please get down for a moment? I asked Mary, and she listened to me, and then I turned back to the clearing and yelled. Hey! Come back, that wasn't fair, and I had forgotten about Mary. That was not why I said that we were done. I had no way to attack you without you being able to take me into some kind of grapple. I knew that you had come far enough for now and that you will need this lesson to sink in, Windorf said as he briefly appeared and then blew away when he was done speaking. I shrugged my shoulders. That was a pretty good explanation, and that sun was getting dangerously low. I turned back to the girl and picked Mary back up. That was beyond the normal amount of strange, but it was also good to see that he is taking me more seriously. I think that tomorrow I might be able to get him to actually try to fight me, but also, thank you, Nushi. You probably saved my life there, and I owe you for that, I said with a smile, but Nushi was writing something in her book, and when she was done, she looked right at me. I know, I have it written in my book, and now that I have increased my level, I can learn more. I will keep track of all the lives you owe me, and then one day I will come to collect them, Nushi said as she closed her book, and that made my eyes go big. Hey. I'm a bit attached to my life, you know. I kind of need it to keep living, I said with a strained look, and Nushi only laughed at me. Not your actual life, silly. I will just take my payment in the form of children since you also said that you would protect me from Nishi. So, I will let this one go if you come through with your promise, but not like I will be around to complain about it, Nushi said, looking away, and her horns were starting to drop down, so I interceded. No, you better worry about saving my life more than because this one is already paid off with my intent. If I can't protect you from Nishi, then I won't be here to say that I told you so after because I will fight until I got nothing left, I said in a confident voice, and that helped snap Nushi's horns back into place. Good, everyone is happy, now can we go? It is going to get dark very soon, and we don't want to be out here when it does. Jilly said, and then she turned and started to run very fast with Nushi on her back. Jilly was right, and I started to run after her with the Cerberus girls running beside me. I had forgotten the girls' clothes, but that was a minor thing considering that we needed to get home before dark. The trip back was far faster than it was there, but that was to be expected, but there weren't any signs of monsters. I had assumed that there was going to be something that would try to attack us or something, but there was nothing. Is this normal? I asked Jilly as we passed by Wataluga's pond. What? The fact that nothing is bothering us. That is because as the sun is just about to go down, until the end of twilight, the daytime monsters go into hiding, and the nighttime ones start waking up. This is probably one of the safest times to be traveling if you have somewhere to go, Jilly explained to me as I ran beside her, and we were almost back to Grogville's area. He wasn't there, and we kept up the pace, running hard to get back, but something felt a bit too easy about this run back. Once we broke from the forest, my suspicions were confirmed, and we all stopped in front of Mex, who was conveniently waiting for us. Now, that didn't mean that he followed us around, but I felt like there should have been more monster attacks. I wouldn't have put it past Mex to get a couple of the monsters to attack us as a test to make sure that I could take care of the girls. You all made it back safe and sound. Wonderful, just wonderful, and it isn't even dark yet. I can say that I was a bit worried, but you handled yourself quite well, but you did have help with Candace, Mex said casually, but he was glaring at Nushi, but she was glaring back. I figured that you might be lurking somewhere, there was no way that it should have been that easy, I said as I watched the two demons stare each other down, and Mex was the first to look away. You know that she is going to be pissed at you forever now, right? And him as well. Mex said as he rubbed his head as he looked at the ground. Candace. The Sphinx. So you know her? I asked in confusion. Sorry, I guess I shouldn't have been so hard on her, but I thought she had left the maze on her own. How was I supposed to know what games you were playing? Nushi retorted, and now I was pretty confused. Chapter 59. Stuffed in a can, and not in a good mood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I looked at Mex, who was rubbing his head, but then I started to feel really weird. It was like a wave of dizziness hit me, and I just tipped backward. Suddenly, I felt like I was sucked into a tiny little pinhole like draining water, and then I was spat out. I felt like I had been turned into rubber and stuffed into a can and then let back out. I immediately hurled onto a pair of black shoes with red feet in them and then fell over. That was not okay, I think I might have shit myself, and I don't think some of my organs are in the right place. I said that was reckless. He doesn't turn to ink like us. I think that you might have just killed him, a female voice complained. Shut it. He is mostly fine, go to him and clean him up. I need to clean my feet now. The familiar voice of Nishi said, oh so. I puked some more. This was a new kind of messed up, why couldn't, just ask myself. What was I thinking about? Here, drink this. I was held down with no effort in something thick with a dark, ironic taste that made me suck a deep breath. Demon's blood. All the damage caused was being reversed right now, but I was also feeling the violence course through my veins. Mex warned me about this, but that just meant that I had to control myself. I was still aware, so I must hold it down, I just have to wait. Now I could open up my eyes, and I could see who my captors are, but that did not help me in the least. Just relax, we are going to put you into a hot bath briefly, and it will help with the healing that you have received from the demon's blood. My name is Noelle, and I am Mex's great-great-grandmother. For now, just relax, and we will get you back into good shape. I had no words, so it didn't matter, I just nodded my head. I was beyond confused about what the actual hell was going on, none of this made any sense. You're dead, pretty sure that's what everyone thinks, right? I asked while gritting my teeth, trying not to let the bubbling font inside of me overflow. He holds it pretty good, for whatever he is, another female said, and soon I was surrounded by buxom, beautiful women that were scooping me up. Each one of them had dark blue skin, but each had different types of horns. I was getting jostled around so much that it was hard to stay concentrated on any one of them. This might hurt at first, Noelle said as I was lowered into what could only be described as boiling cream. The scalding froth made my eyes rip open, and I wanted to scream, but something said, no. I can't explain it, but it wouldn't let me try to grab the edges, and I was sure that this was it for me, but then the pain stopped. Noelle Darenda, water. I looked, and it was most definitely water that I was sitting in, but I was sure that it had been some kind of milky boiling froth. I tried to move my arms and found that I had motion once again, and I could move my mouth. Wow, that was a lot of work just to get me to come visit, I said, rubbing my jaw and then dunking my head under the water. I held it there for a moment, collecting my thoughts about what was going on. Nishi had done some kind of teleporting, but it had almost killed me, but why? This was the castle, and I was on my way over. She could have just come and got me. I brought my head above the water and then took a deep breath of air. I wiped my hand over my face and stood up in the bath pot or whatever I was in, and looked around. Well, whatever he is, we can keep him busy until Nishi gets back. A red-headed demoness said, and I looked down to see her reaching forward to grab me. Get your hands back. I am already spoken for tonight, and I am not in a good mood. Where is this damn old woman? I asked after swatting away the redhead's hand. Help him out and get him some shorts. This damn old woman is waiting to talk to you, Nishi said from the other room, but all the women shrunk down. So this was the pressure they all felt from Nishi, and it was enough to push these women to the ground on the spot and make them cower in fear. I stepped out of the pot and walked out into the main room, where Nishi was sitting in a chair with the back facing me. I walked around her and then took a seat in her fancy red velvet chair with my wet naked ass and rubbed it in. The old woman had her arms crossed, and she did not look impressed, but I really didn't care. I reached forward and grabbed the only cup of tea on the table and a couple cookies and then sat back in my chair. I dunked the cookies in and ate them, then drained the tea, which was very good, no sugar, a spot of cream, but not too dry. Are you done yet? I asked after setting down the white teacup on the table. What did you just say to me? Are you too stupid to be scared of me? Nishi growled from her chair, clearly miffed about the cup of tea and the one I was pouring now. Stop scaring your family, it doesn't work on me, so you are just wasting you, menace. And you are causing your family that is supposed to be dead a great deal of stress, I said as I picked the teacup back up, but it was too hot to drink right away. I heard gasps for air from the room where I was just cleaned, and that must mean she let them go. It still boggled me how she could be so influential on everyone around me, and I was fine. So, what have you almost killed me for to bring me here? I asked and then took another sip of tea, making Nishi growl at me, and reach her hand out to the side. A cup flew into it, and she set it down on the table and then glared at me. I glared back but finally relented because I was already being a rude asshole and poured Nishi a cup of tea. Chapter 60. Dancing, I just lost it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I needed to bring you here this way because you don't know a lot of things that are going on right now. Mex and the others cannot know you are here and do not. To them, you just disappeared, but after we are done here, we will drop you out of the sky, and Mex will catch you, Nishi said plainly after quickly grabbing her tea. What? No, I am not getting dropped out of the sky. Why is this a good idea? I am just going to walk out that. I started to say, but then I looked around for the door, and it wasn't there. There is no way to exit this tower unless you are of my bloodline and only with my permission. You will have to trust me in this and listen to what I have to say if you care about Nushi or Liddy, Nishi said to me and then took a sip of her tea while still glaring at me. Damn this woman. Always another trick up her sleeve, but what was I going to do about it? Just because I could handle being around her did not mean that I could take Nishi. I just needed to calm down and listen to what she had to say. There was obviously something I was missing that was key. Fine, okay, I am listening. Tell me all about what you have been doing here and why it is important to me, I said as I took another sip of tea before setting it down on the table and looking directly into Nishi's dark red eyes. First, what has my son told you about demons? Nishi asked. Next to nothing, other than the basics about the blood and how you govern yourselves. Nothing really past that, other than you eating your children, but that wasn't true, so I probably have no clue about anything, I said, running a hand through my hair. Yes, there is a lot that you don't know about the demon race, and it is the reason that I have been doing this for so long. Demons here on this island are disgusting monsters, and I am sure you think that I am just exaggerating, but that is not the case. They are places here that farm demons, Nishi said, and this was the part where I started to get confused. Wait, demon farm? That can't be right, or I just don't understand what you are talking about. Are you trying to say that the demons have farms, and they are what? Raising animals? I asked, thoroughly confused. No, they farm themselves and slaughter the women right after. If demon women are found that can't bear children, they are slaughtered. Dao is farming to try and get stronger demons, but that involves killing the ones that are not strong enough, Nishi explained, but the hairs started rising on the back of my neck. You're not kidding, are you? Then this means. Tell me about demon pregnancies. This is something that must be involved with them then, and if they are just using women as breeding machines, I am going to get angry, I said, gripping the side of the chair. Then you had better be prepared to get very angry. Yes, that is exactly what it is, but far worse than that. Do you know how pregnancy works with demons? Nishi asked me, and I reached for my tea. No, I don't, but I did see that Liddy was pregnant before this, but now she isn't. Where is the kid? I asked. When a male demon impregnates any female, they make them barren. When the demon is born, it will leak out of the female as black ink and then form into a fully grown demon, Nishi explained, and I broke the arm of the chair. That made my blood accelerate at a rapid pace and changed the hand I was holding my tea with. I grabbed the other arm, and I was partway to crushing the other arm of the chair in my rage. What the hell was going on here? So, before I lose my shit, what else don't I know? There must be more than this, and I would prefer to get this all out in one go, I said, and the other arm broke off, so I tossed it to the side. Do you mind? Those were not built on this island. Nishi yelled at me, but I glared at her. Speak, woman, you need me, and I need you to get off this island more than likely. So, stop giving me parts of the whole thing and just explain it plainly, I growled, moving my hands around, trying not to spill my tea, and find a place to put them down, settling for my knees after setting down the tea. I really don't like you, and I wish that I could eat you. Nishi hissed at me, but I pointed my finger at her. What did I just tell you about that anger of yours? Put a cap on it, or I'll smash that damn teapot. I said, leaning forward to shake my finger in her face. This witch had no concern for the people around her, and I could see the women crouching in the far room. She was already making me upset with this story, so I was not in any mood for this childlike behavior of only thinking about the goal and not the journey to get there. I can just kill you, and then. Nishi started to say, but I lost it. I stood up and kicked the table with all my strength, and it exploded in a spray of liquids, food, and wood chips. I walked up to stand directly in front of Nishi with my cock nearly touching her face. I didn't care anymore. Here, come on then, smartass. Kill me, I said and waited. Nishi started to change, and she started to get a lot bigger to the point that the chair broke, and she stood up as it did. After she was done, Nishi stood a full head taller than me and glared down at me.